Hey folks, this is Vint with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to quickly review Root. It's important to stress that what you're looking at here is an early access build, so it goes without saying that anything that you're about to see is subject to change. This review is obviously also subject to change, although I wanted to give my impressions of it and tell you what I thought of this particular early access game at this point in time. This is a digital adaptation of a relatively popular board game. Don't let its cutesy nature fool you, though. It's actually quite fun. The idea of the game is this. There are 4 factions, and there's one central map. And each faction plays extremely different than the other ones. There's a general set of rules that everyone follows. However, every faction has their own way of getting around, moving, interacting with various aspects of the environment, crafting. It's such a unique experience. If you pick a particular faction and play as them, you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. I was just doing this as the other faction. Why can't I do this now? So, yeah, I'm 3 hours into this. I've never played the board game. And I've gone through all of the tutorials, and I've played one match against the AI. There's easy, medium, and hard. There's also online play, should you want to do that. As far as the 4 factions are concerned, there's Marquise de Cat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But this is the most straightforward faction. They score their victory points by constructing buildings primarily. They also can attack and score victory points that way. But you're going to have build spots on various areas of the map. The map is broken up into several locations, and each location has 2 or 3 build slots, maybe 1 build slot, something like that. But these guys can build workshops and sawmills and recruiters. Recruiters allow them to bring in more army people to help them conquer the map. Sawmills allow them to get wood so that they can construct more buildings. Workshops allow them to craft cards that are in their hand. Each player gets cards that they draw, and they can do various things with them, and these workshops will allow this particular faction to play these cards in various ways. This particular faction just gets a straight 3 action points every turn. They're the brute force. They're probably the most straightforward brute force faction, most beginner-friendly faction there is. If I were to recommend any of the 4 factions to start with, it would be this one, Marquise de Cat. Just because out of all of them, they make the most sense to me. Okay, there's nothing crazy going on. It's just build, build, build. Use your big army to attack everything that possible. Keep on top of everyone. In fact, they start the game with 1 army in every location, except for 1 or 2 particular spots. They also start with 3 buildings, like they're a powerhouse. But the other factions have other ways of getting around that. The Eyrie Dynasties, Eyrie, E-Y-R-I-E, whatever, Dynasties, they're like an avian faction. And what they do is they go around the map building roosts. And the more roosts that they have, the more victory points that they earn. And they can even build roosts in places where either other armies actually occupy. So, you know, they start small, but if you let them build up, they get to be pretty darn nasty. Now, the downside with this faction, what's tricky about them, is that they have this decree that they have to abide by. They have 4 actions. Rather than have just 3 action points like the other Marquise de Cat faction, they will pick a leader. There's 4 leaders, and this leader gets 2 starting actions. They have to abide by those actions every turn. They're going to assign cards that they get from their hand into the decrees, into the various action points, or into the various actions. There's move, attack, build, and something else. And they have to do this. If they don't, if they can't abide by the actions that are in their decree, they go into turmoil. They lose all of the actions that were queued up in their decree, and they have to choose a new leader and start over from scratch. So they are a faction of balance. You need to plan ahead with them. You need to go, okay, I'm about to assign this card with a suit of red into this combat decree. That means that every turn from here on out, I have to initiate combat in a location with that particular suit color. Okay, the cards that you get are suit colors. The locations on the map have a suit color. So you every time you assign a card to an action, you have to make sure that you can do this every single turn, and that if you if you assign like a yellow beige card to this action, you need to make sure that you can do it every turn. If you don't, then you're going to go into turmoil and have to start over. So you can queue up a lot of actions with this faction over time. However, the trick is being able to keep up with it. And that's the trick with them. There are wild suits in this game. It's like a bird talon blue suit color. And luckily, you can perform actions in any color location with that. So you can assign this wild to various decrees. However, when you go into turmoil, you lose a victory point for every wild colored decree that you have. So if you have a wild card in the move decree, and when you go into turmoil, you lose a victory point because you had a wild card in that decree. It's quite interesting. The Woodland Alliance, they are like the scum faction in Star Wars Empires of War. They are the Robin Hoods of the game. Instead of building a brute force, they will spread sympathy throughout the land. These sympathy tokens, the more they have spread out throughout the lands, the more victory points they earn. These sympathy tokens can be attacked directly, and they cannot attack back, but they can still spread via the cards that they're getting, and spread them all over the place and get a lot of points that way. They can cause uprisings or revolts, and this will cause all of the buildings and all of the enemy units at that location to go away instantly. But they have to discard supporters in order to do that. Supporters are a resource that they can get by discarding cards. So if they discard a red card, they get a red supporter. If they discard a green or a yellow card, they get a yellow supporter. And then they trade in those supporters to either spread this influence, this sympathy throughout the land, or they cause uprisings and the like. So they're more of a backwater faction. They can still build bases and train units. However, they're not like a brute force faction. But the nice thing about them is they get a bonus to combat. They're guerrilla warfare. Whenever you attack in this game, whenever there's combat, 2 dice are rolled. And the higher number always goes to the attacker. And the defender gets the lower number. And the dice are either 0, 1, 2, or 3, the results. Well, the Woodland Alliance will always take the higher number because they're experts in guerrilla warfare. So even though they've got less units, they have a bonus to that combat. Finally, the Vagabond is a one-man show. Instead of building bases all over the place or spreading sympathy, whatever, this guy, he's like a raccoon. He'll go around and just do quests. He'll explore ruins, and these ruins are like build locations on the map. And once he explores those locations and gets loot from that location, it opens up a build location for the other factions to use. His action points come from the items that are in his backpack. So the more items he has in his backpack, the more he can do every turn, but he exhausts them when he does those actions. And he can only unexhaust so many items per turn. He can increase that number by getting certain resources. I think it's like a coffee mug or something. He can get more gold in order to draw more cards at the end of the turn. Swords allow him to fight other faction. One-time fight action. A crossbow will instantly kill 1 unit of another faction. But there's also a diplomacy side to him. Whereas the other factions don't have any diplomacy. They're always at war. This guy starts off like a neutral. He can either aid or go hostile with another faction. Once he attacks another faction, they are hostile for the rest of the game. However, if he's friendly with them, he can aid the other faction by giving them cards, giving in cards that he's got in his hand, and he might get an item back for it. And in doing so, it increases his aid with that faction, his sympathies or his alliance with that faction. And he gets more points for doing these quests, which entails just exhausting certain items that he has in his backpack on the right colored location, or constantly leveling up an alliance diplomacy with a particular faction. Just doing random things around the environment will increase his victory points. So this guy, again, he's like this nomad trader. I don't know. He's like a scout. He's like Harry Mudd from Star Trek. He's just he's just this or maybe Quark. He's just a one-man show going around trading, underhandedly doing things, or being honest and actually helping people. But he's earning points in various ways. So I know I've talked about these 4 factions and not really about the game, but that's the 75% of the game is understanding the factions. The rest of it is figuring out what to do with that faction and how to use their abilities and their unique talents to win you the game. As a game itself, it's put together very well. The graphics are nice. My only complaint is with the camera. For whatever reason, I'm having a hard time scrolling down. You can zoom in and out, but edge panning downward to see the bottom of the map, it doesn't go down for some reason. Like, I have to zoom all the way out to see the bottom of the map. I can't scroll down or mouse edge down in order to see the bottom of the map. It's just, for whatever reason, the camera controls are a little wonky. Sometimes they'll zoom to things when they shouldn't be, But again, this is early access, so I don't want to beat up the game too hard. But if anything, right now, I would say let's fix the camera controls. But other than that, like, this is quite the interesting game. I'm enjoying it. Having never played the board game, I think, this game is a very good digital board game. I would play this regularly if I, had the time to do it. So, yeah, Root, it's quite cool. It's $15, Steam's early access program. I highly recommend this one, assuming you like digital board games. If you guys haven't already, subscribed to me on Twitch and YouTube. That way you can stay up to date with any new content I'm going to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.